When I first moved into the apartment on Maple Street, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. It was cheap, suspiciously cheap, but I chalked that up to good timing and the fact that it was slightly older. It was a one-bedroom unit in a converted Victorian house, split into 4 small apartments. The listing had said character and charm, which usually means creaky floors and drafty windows, but honestly it didn't bother me. I just needed a fresh start. I'd just broken up with my boyfriend of 4 years, lost my job at a marketing firm, and was desperate to get out of my old neighborhood. I wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere I could just exist for a while. The landlord, a middle-aged guy named Mr. Dwyer, seemed a little too eager to rent it out, but I figured that was a good thing. He barely looked at my references and I signed the lease the same day I viewed it. The place smelled faintly like old wood and dust, but it wasn't bad. The floors were original hardwood, the ceilings high, and there was this old fireplace that didn't work but looked pretty in pictures. The only thing that made me hesitate was the basement. It was accessible from the hallway outside my door, a narrow wooden staircase that creaked when you looked at it. Mr. Dwyer told me it was just for storage and utilities, and that I didn't need to worry about it. That first week I was blissfully happy. I set up my little corner desk by the window, decorated with thrift store finds, and started freelancing online. The neighbors were quiet, mostly older folks. I didn't see anyone much except for an elderly woman who lived above me. Her name was Mrs. Lang and she was sweet but odd. Every time I ran into her she'd say something like, "You're brave to move in there, dear," and then just smile like she hadn't said anything strange. I thought she meant the rent or maybe the age of the building. But then one night about a week after moving in I woke up to this sound. It was around 2 a.m. A soft thud, then a dragging noise. At first I thought it was my upstairs neighbor moving furniture, but the sound wasn't coming from above. It was coming from below. My stomach tightened. I lived on the first floor. Below me was the basement. I told myself it was probably pipes or maybe a raccoon. I'd read about those things sneaking into old houses. But then I heard it again, closer this time. Like something was scraping along the floorboards under my bed. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning I went down to look, even though I hated how the air changed near the basement door. It felt colder there, heavier somehow. I grabbed a flashlight and opened the door, telling myself I was being ridiculous. The stairs groaned under my weight as I went down. The basement smelled like damp concrete and something metallic, like rust or blood. There were a few old boxes, a water heater, and a single hanging light bulb with a pull chain. I tugged it and a weak yellow light flickered on. Nothing looked out of place, but then I noticed the floor. Near the far wall the cement looked newer. Like it had been patched recently. I don't know why that stood out so much, but it gave me this awful feeling. I crouched and touched it. It was smooth and slightly raised, like someone had poured fresh concrete over something. I went back upstairs fast and tried to laugh at myself. Maybe the landlord had just repaired a leak or something. But that night the noises came back, louder this time. A rhythmic tapping. A soft moan. I froze in bed, my heart hammering. I tried to record it on my phone, but by the time I hit record it had stopped. The next morning I called Mr. Dwyer. "Hey, I keep hearing noises from the basement at night," I said. "Do you think maybe an animal got in or something?" There was a pause. Then he said too quickly, No, that's impossible. I had it sealed a few weeks ago. Nothing can get in there." I frowned. "Sealed? You mean like—" "I just mean the access windows," he interrupted. "Look, the place is old. Pipes knock, wood settles. It's nothing to worry about." But his voice had this nervous edge to it that I didn't like. That night I decided to test something. I put my phone near the floor, right above where I thought the sound was coming from, and left it recording while I slept. When I checked it in the morning, the first few hours were normal. A few creaks and the hum of the fridge. But around 2:14 a.m. there was something else. A faint, rasping voice. At first I thought it was static. But when I played it again with my headphones I could make out words. "Help me." My stomach dropped. I replayed it again and again. It was definitely a voice, weak, almost a whisper. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or if someone was actually down there. I ran upstairs to Mrs. Lang's apartment that morning. She opened the door wearing a pink robe and looked like she'd been expecting me. "You heard it, didn't you?" she said softly. My mouth went dry. "Heard what?" She just sighed. "You're not the first tenant, dear. The last girl, she heard it too." I stared at her. "What happened to her?" Mrs. Lang hesitated, then whispered, "She left in the middle of the night. Didn't even take her things." I swear my blood ran cold when Mrs. Lang said that. "She just left?" I asked. "What do you mean she left? Like she disappeared?" Mrs. Lang nodded slowly. "The police came by after, but they never found anything wrong. Mr. Dwyer told them she'd skipped out on rent, but—" She trailed off, looking over my shoulder down the hallway, almost like she expected someone to be listening. "You should be careful down there." I wanted to press her for more, but she shut the door gently, leaving me alone in the hallway with my heart pounding. That day I couldn't focus on anything. Every creak of the old house made me jump. When evening came I sat in bed with all the lights on and my phone flashlight ready. Around midnight I started hearing the noise again, faint, like someone softly tapping from beneath the floor. I don't know what possessed me, but I decided I had to know. I grabbed my flashlight and a kitchen knife for what, I don't even know, moral support maybe, and I went down to the basement again. The smell was stronger this time, that metallic tang was sharper like iron or old blood. The light bulb flickered when I turned it on. I stood there staring at the same patch of smooth concrete. That's when I noticed something else. The patch wasn't just newer, there were faint lines around it like someone had scratched at the surface. I crouched down and ran my fingers across it. The marks looked like fingernails. I felt my stomach twist. I took a deep breath, aimed my flashlight at the edges of the patch, and noticed a small crack along one corner. And before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed an old rusted wrench from a nearby shelf and started hitting the edge of the cement. It didn't take long before a chunk came loose. The smell that came out was so foul I gagged, like rot and mildew mixed with something far worse. Then I saw it. A small piece of fabric, pale pink, sticking out from under the concrete. I froze. My hand was shaking so badly the flashlight beam kept jumping. I pulled on the fabric and it tore easily, revealing what looked like part of a sleeve. That's when I realized it wasn't just fabric. It was clothing still on someone. I dropped everything and bolted upstairs. I didn't stop running until I was outside on the street, barefoot and shaking. I called the police and tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled. There's something buried, under my floor. Please come quick. When they arrived, I waited across the street while they went in. I watched the flashing lights reflect off the old windows, and after what felt like forever, one of the officers came out looking pale. They asked me to come to the station for a statement. Apparently they had found human remains. The next day the news was everywhere. Remains discovered in Maple Street apartment basement. They confirmed it was a woman mid-20s, estimated to have been buried there a few years ago. The craziest part? The body matched the description of the previous tenant Mrs. Lang mentioned. A woman named Claire Benton who had vanished without a trace. The landlord, Mr. Dwyer, was questioned immediately. But what I didn't expect was what came next. See, while the police were investigating, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, it was Mr. Dwyer. His voice was trembling. "Why did you go down there?" he whispered. "What?" I stammered. "You weren't supposed to open it. You shouldn't have touched anything." I hung up and called the detective handling the case. They told me not to worry, that Mr. Dwyer was already in custody for questioning. But I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying his voice, the panic in it. The next few days were a blur. Forensics teams came in and out. I stayed at a friend's place because I couldn't step foot in that building again. Then one afternoon a detective called me back. They'd uncovered something unbelievable. Apparently Mr. Dwyer had a brother, a twin, who had gone missing over 10 years ago. Turns out it wasn't his brother who disappeared. It was Mr. Dwyer himself. The man I'd rented from wasn't who he said he was. The real Mr. Dwyer had died years ago, in that same basement. The man I'd signed the lease with had stolen his identity, forged ownership papers, and kept renting out the units under his name. The police think Claire, the previous tenant, discovered the truth and confronted him. That's when he killed her and buried her under the floor. When they told me this, I could barely process it. I kept hearing his voice on the phone, the calm, overly friendly way he'd said, "You don't need to worry about the basement." He'd known the whole time. The police found his car abandoned 2 towns over. Inside they found a burner phone, several fake IDs, and a list of other rental properties under different names. They never found him. A few weeks later I went back to the apartment to pick up the rest of my things. The whole place was taped off, quiet, eerie. I thought maybe I'd feel closure, but instead I felt sick. I saw Mrs. Lang standing by the gate holding a small potted plant. "They won't catch him," she said softly when I walked up. "He's too good at hiding. That man's been living lies for years." I didn't know what to say. She looked at me, eyes glassy. "You were lucky, dear. He liked you, I think. That's the only reason you're still alive." I didn't ask how she knew that. I just nodded, turned, and walked away from Maple Street for the last time. For months I had nightmares about that place. The scraping under the floor, the whisper in the recording, the smooth patch of concrete. I even tried therapy, but sometimes when it's quiet at night, I swear I can still hear that faint tapping like someone trapped beneath the floorboards asking for help. I keep wondering what would have happened if I'd ignored the sounds. Or if I'd confronted Mr. Dwyer sooner. Sometimes when I drive through town I pass old houses that look like that one. Faded paint, creaky porches, too much character. I can't help but stare and wonder who really owns them. Because if he's still out there, and I'm sure he is, then someone else is probably signing a lease with him right now, not knowing that their friendly landlord isn't who he says he is. And maybe one night they'll start hearing the same sounds I did.